Hello, mate, and welcome to this episode of Render Review. This episode, we've got a very special guest. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to my good friend, IT Roy. How you doing, Roy?
Hello, everyone. IT Roy here. I'm so honored to be here with Thundorn and looking at some beautiful renders, providing some comments. If you don't know who I am, I'm the horrible person with a YouTube channel that tries to explain Daz things, usually in a very roundabout, lengthy way. And then I also do visual novel development on my own visual novel, To Be a Keen. Been doing that for a couple of years. Got into this as sort of a hobby and ended up getting wrapped up into it where it's practically a full-time job now. So that's my backstory. No art background, no photography background, which I do not recommend, but here I am.
Awesome. Our first entry is from a resubmission from Jeff Penver, who we'll remember did the awesome work in integrating his HDRI into his image last time round. And it looks like we've got more of the same here, Roy.
Yeah, I would say. I see the HDRI and I see a bench and our lovely model here.
Absolutely. So I will give you an opportunity to share your thoughts first, and then if I've got anything to chip in, I will do.
Well, sounds good. So I'm just a few things that stood out to me here. I like what I'm assuming can only be D-force on that dress with the way it falls. It looks really nice. Excellent work there. A little bit there down in that corner. Might be, maybe it's clipping a bit into the bench. It's kind of hard to tell, but the nice thing is it's not anything that stood out, and that's really all I care about with D-force, is that it's not obvious that, wait a minute, that mesh is should not be intersecting there.
Absolutely. Nipple poke through and clipping.
I like the simplicity of the scene, but I wish we had a bit more, because not sure everybody's going to be able to tell it's an HDRI. It's nicely done. It doesn't scream out, I'm an HDRI, but it is there, and then all we have are the bench to kind of anchor her in the scene as well. And so I'd like to see maybe some trees closer in the foreground around her. Obviously, you're going to have to be careful on lights and shadows when you do that, but might be something nice. Maybe something down below that bench, too, or something.
Sure.
I don't know. Heck, put a dog at her feet or something like that. Just something. Nothing to super distract from the scene, but fill it out. It almost just feels kind of like, while she is clearly the focus of the scene, there's nothing else to really anchor me there. And I'm a hair texture nerd, so while I like the hair, it almost just kind of looks blocky from this distance, just a bit in certain areas with where those bright lights and those shadows are hitting it. So just double check, make sure that can maybe be smoothed out a bit.
Yeah, sure.
And then the only other thing I noticed was that right leg is kind of floating. I'm going to guess, because I've been there before, that what happened is you can't push her down too much or kind of the dress falls in and you could have an issue there, but you might just have to resim it with the D-force simulation and get that leg closer, because her foot is also, if it is touching the ground on that HDRI, it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's just slightly off, which unfortunately, just slightly off on this stuff, it really kind of draws attention to it.
Sure.
But other than that, I mean, the pose is nice. I think the lighting's pretty good there. The sunglasses definitely have a sense of mystery. And I guess the only other thing I'll say is she looks like she is posing very unwillingly and ready to get on with her day here with that expression. So,
I 100% agree, man. Overall, really good image quality. As you've already highlighted, the leg not being resting on the bench is the thing that kind of leaps out of me as being really that's my number one thing that I would fix in this issue, is that, as you said, where the D-force simulation is tricky to pull off when the character is sitting on a surface, but there is a good 1.5 2 inch gap there between her bum and the bench. I don't want to say that there's been a reluctance to tweak the pose, perhaps, but the hand, if you look at the hand is also hovering above the bench rather than actually down on it, which is something that we all have to deal with all the time, don't we? Realistically, you end up having to rebend the fingers and the thumbs so that the palm can actually rest on the surface. The expression is the other thing that I would have picked up on as well. Yeah, it's that's very much a Daz neutral expression going on there. No it doesn't look like there's been an expression applied. Not necessarily a problem, but it certainly puts out a very specific mood to the image. As you said, it kind of feels like she's not there willingly. She's kind of being coerced to pose by maybe a boyfriend or a cringy YouTube fan or something. And as you pointed out, where the light is so strong, pointed down at the top of the head there, because this is a hard light source, the geometry for the hair is reflecting the light, so you can actually see the geometry of the hair rather than the texture, whereas around the back of the head there you can see that the texture is giving it that nice natural look, and it's doing the same thing under this side as well. But where the light is bouncing off that geometry at the top of the head, you can see the blocky, you can see the strips basically, which is something that you can't necessarily do in Daz Studio itself, but you might have to do some tweaking in post just to kind of maybe put that texture back in there so that the realism isn't lost, because as you pointed out, it's a little bit, it feels a little bit wrong. But overall, I mean, an amazing job once again blending the HDRI into the scene. You know, the composition itself is really solid. There is a little bit of negative space under the bench. I 100% agree with you on that one. But yeah, no, good effort anyway from Jeff. Let's see some more from you, my friend.
Absolutely.
Next up, we've got a entry from a first timer, or a first time submitter to this channel anyway, and this is Dazed Away. I guess a kind of a gnome-like character. It's very stylized. It's got a very sort of plastic Toy Story kind of feel to it. So what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I definitely thought kind of cartoon, so that kind of colors where I'm going to go with this. Everything looks really denoised heavily based on the smoothness and stuff from here, at least.
Sure.
Hair and stuff like that. But again, cartoon effect, that's less of a concern. We're not going for photorealism. I am worried about this gnome smoking problems potentially. Maybe they can get on Nicorette or something. But the thing that stood out to me most, and I get the stylized effect they're going for, is the light that's clearly they're lighting their next cigarette, right? So that's behind the hands, and we're not seeing it, which is fine. It's clear what it is, but that light is so bright. I mean, if you look right around the thumb and the finger there where those kind of come together, that is just wow. I get the fact that you need a certain light there, but maybe you try to add something to augment it, because what I'm worried about is there was a lighter or a small emissive or something put in there and it was just cranked way up, because I think I would add some additional lighting there to fill it out a bit. And I imagine cranked it up because, hey, you want to be able to see the full face, which is nice. You know, you're not getting too many weird shadows or anything here, which is good. But yeah, just looking at that brightness is just overwhelming. The other thing that I might do, because I've done this before, being lazy, when I realize my lighting is overly bright in some areas, but otherwise well balanced where I want it, is I would take it into Photoshop and I just drag down in the camera raw that highlight slider.
Sure.
And try to even that out just a bit, because those high points are clearly, clipping out, and just a whole lot. And then also it's causing so much there with like some translucency and stuff on the hands, with probably the subsurface scattering that's just a bit overwhelming. I would just where I would go with this one is I would go to Google Images search, and I'd search, man lighting cigarette, and I'd look at some images and see like, okay, how bright does that get, right? And even stylized in like Hollywood, where they're probably going to literally have him like holding a light in his hands or something. What does that look like? Because it just looks like he's holding this massive ball of fire almost, whereas it would be a pretty small flame. So that was the thing that stood out to me. I mean, otherwise, outfit looks good. Pose looks interesting. The expression, I mean, there's only so much you can do with a cigarette in the mouth, but it looks okay. It still kind of looks a little bit like a neutral one, but those eyebrows are arched and everything. So I do say, hey, there's something maybe going on here. Maybe he's looking up, and as soon as he finishes lighting his cigarette, cut me in half with that sword.
Yeah.
So there could definitely be a story there. And I like it. It's simple, but there's something with the background. I'm guessing those are blinds and a window, but that kind of fits the scene. You've got some different colored lights coming from there. And so, yeah, overall, pretty interesting effort. And That's going to be where my comments stop on this one.
Yeah, I agree. In most of that, I'm getting a very much a Link kind of vibe from this guy. Like a Link from Legend of Zelda kind of feel going on, which is cool. It's cool. Bear in mind, I just moved the image back to. There we go. So yeah, the stylized look. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the kind of the cartoony render looking thing. It's not necessarily for me, but that's not what we're here to discuss. So, very much, I think the thing about the light, the cigarette light that strikes me as, it leaps out of me as being slightly off is because of its contrast to the background. Relative to if this were a nighttime shot and you were relying on the cigarette light to illuminate the face, in contrast to the background, there would be a lot of darkness behind him. But because you can see the window light behind him is quite dull, it makes the lighter look so much brighter than perhaps it should be. But it's, again, it's got a very sort of Link, Legend of Zelda meets Pixar kind of vibe going on, which is probably going to be right up some people's street. So I don't want to be too harsh in terms of the choice of the style. Overall, I can't really see anything to criticize in terms of like the costume or the poses. I can't see any clipping or any kind of problems with the pose or anything like that. As you said, it's very difficult with a cigarette in the character's mouth for the expression to be anything in particular. He's sort of got a little bit of a snarl on his mouth where his mouth is open on one side holding the cigarette, so he's clearly kind of trying to be menacing, and it's certainly working. But maybe if this were me, I would agree with you. I'd probably tone down the lighter a little bit, or turn down the background a little bit, one or the other.
Sure.
That would probably be the way I would go with that one. So cool. Overall, though, another really solid image. Very hard to sort of critique something like that because it is what it is, quite literally.
Yeah, I'll be seeing it in my dreams, I'm sure. Hopefully, in a decent way. So.
The next one is a resubmission or a fresh submission from a friend of the channel, Steve Howe. And those of you who recall, his last submission was the three-headed dragon thing chasing the warrior who was carrying the female on his shoulder. So we've got a slightly different vibe going on this time. Instead, we've got a vampire kind of scene going on. So tell me what you're thinking, Roy.
Oh, man. Well, I'll just say that like horror scenes and stuff like this are not my bag, in the sense that I always have trouble setting them up myself without them looking like they're a somehow spoof and should be in a comedy. They instead of this is a real thing, like I should be, man, this is like coming straight from the Halloween series. It looks like it's coming from Shaun of the Dead, where I'm trying to mock it. So that is always a tough thing. However, I like the glowing effect on the eyes. I do think that with the glowing effect on the eyes, they almost look kind of off. It looks like she's kind of either really like glancing down a little bit with her eyes unnaturally, in which case I'd bring the head down just a bit with it, or they're just kind of glowing off at a different angle. Sure. I love the expression on the vampire here with the girl she's holding. The pose itself on that girl seems a little awkward, but the expression looks really good. Just that fear level, right, that I can see. And then the other thing that stood out is just that depth of field that seems to be a little heavy and not quite in focus where we want it. So it seems that, and it could be too, because I do see a little bit of noise in the render, so that could be throwing me off, but it seems that the vampire isn't so much in focus. The girl's face, some of it is, but it's a very heavy depth of field. We've got a bit of her dress that's visible there. Before we start to blur. So I would look at increasing that to compensate and bring just a little bit more of those two characters into focus. Past that, I like the setting. There's some light there. I would say that for these sorts of dramatic things, I'm not a fan of like sunset or sunrise. Just go ahead and put it at night, right? So I would, that does present some lighting things, but you could do like a big moonlight or something like that. And so if you did that, that would make the character's glowing eyes pop a bit more. We could add some interesting shadows and emphasis and light to really bring some things out and really bring a focus to it, because now the only thing that seems to be really focusing us is that depth of field between those couple of characters, and it just to me doesn't seem to be working. But I do love the composition in the sense that where they are in the frame looks pretty good. And the fact that we clearly have expressions on both of them. It's very nice. And also the posing, while I mentioned it's kind of unnatural for the girl being held, the other one looks pretty good. And I don't see any clipping or anything like that. So props, because especially with clothing and everything, it's always fun to try to get characters to line up and not look like they're, two robots integrating into each other.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, I would agree with the it's clearly either dawn or dusk, and I would venture to guess, and I don't like making assumptions about people's motivations for their artistic choices, but and knowing as well as you do how hard it is to get a decent noise-free render in low light situations, I would imagine that the choice of doing this at dusk or dawn was to make the render work.
Yes.
I would agree with you. There is a very shallow depth of field here. It is the girl's face is perfectly in focus, and the vampire's face is slightly out. So, in a way, it works because you could argue that it was motion blur, but
Sure.
I would probably just make sure that I open up that focal range a little bit just to increase improve the focus on her face. In terms of the light in the eyes, I've always found that things like that, less is more. What the effect that you're going for, I understand, is that she's a supernatural being and she's about to attack her prey. But what I'm picking up, the vibe I'm picking up from here, is Superman about to burn something with his eyes. The glow is just a little bit too much. I would turn that down and go for a more minimalist kind of feel. Pose-wise, I really like the way that they are posed because of how unposed it looks, if that makes any sense. Like the vampire's got clearly a really good, it's good contact around the neck. There's good contact on the leg, and you can't see underneath the leg, so you can't see if there's any clipping or not. But the dress is obviously a D-Force asset that's kind of draping as you would expect it to. But it looks... When people are in funny, when you take a photograph of someone and they're not looking, very rarely do they look like they are posing. Most of the time they're in really awkward, unattractive facial expressions and things like that. So the fact that the pose looks wrong, it kind of works for me in that respect. And I agree with you. The expression on the face on the victim is really good. The fear is clearly there. It's sort of like a fear and confusion at the same time. So, that kind of works for me. I'm really happy with that. I think Steve it's a dramatic improvement on the last effort, and keep moving in the direction that you're moving, my friend, and very soon you'll be giving me and Roy a run for our money.
Absolutely. Last
up then is this effort from Bradford, who is also a return submission. I saved this one to last because this is more kind of my bag, this sort of image. So anyway, over to you, Roy.
Yeah, I was going to agree 100% on that one. That, this is... When I'm doing special renders and things, this is it, right? Usually a single character, often female, with just a bit going on in the scene. We can kind of get a sense of place here for the scene. Seems to be some temple, or there's a fire, there's some stuff in the background. I clearly holding a blade. Depth of field is heavy, but it works. Nothing that, in personal stylistic choice, I might want to see a bit more of the background. But past that, it's not raw in depth of field. The character, along with her weapon and stuff, are in focus. This is not a weird thing. The pose looks good. There's an expression there. She's looking off, and she's looking off in the direction that we would want her to look off in as well. That creates a sense of mystery. So that is the thing too. Like if she was looking to the right, that would feel, even though something could be coming from there, it would feel kind of off because we've got a lot of the stuff on the right here.
Sure.
But with her looking off to the left, it works for that sense of mystery. The shadows are exceptionally well done there. We've got a defined shadow right along the nose. But we don't have anything weird going on under the eyes. She's well lit, but she doesn't seem overly lit. The scene overall looks well lit, that brightness where it should, but it's not overexposed. And I mean, I love the blade. I think I can see a bit of a shine on the blade, but it's clearly like an older blade and stuff, so that works. You don't have to have like a super shiny, nice chrome thing that's reflecting all sorts of things off into the scene. The outfit looks really nice, and I mean, it's one of those that when I first saw it, I was like, okay, I kind of felt weird about it, and then I realized why I felt weird, which is, okay, I want to know the rest of the story, right? This is something that's grabbing me. Like, okay, what's she looking off at? What's about to happen? Did she just finish taking care of something? Is she about to? But she looks both intimidating, somewhat relaxed, but also slightly nervous, and all those things kind of work together. Sure. So I really like this one. Good use of assets there. There's nothing. It's not too busy. You've got good focus. The rule of thirds is clearly in force here for this render, which is wonderful to see. And I mean, it's a relaxed, fairly natural pose, but still there's just that tenseness inherent in the scene with the lighting and everything that comes together.
What I'm getting from this image is kind of like a half Skyrim, half Mummy Returns kind of vibe, you know? And it's, as I said, it's right up my street. You pretty much nailed everything that I was going to say. You know, the guy, Bradford's done a really good job. He's employed depth of field to what I would consider to be the perfect amount for this kind of shot, because you can set up the context of the surroundings in other images, and this one is clearly about her reaction to something that's happening off camera. And as you said, it makes you want to know who's just walked in or what's just happened that's made her look in that direction. She's clearly in a very defensive posture because she's still holding her weapon, and she's sort of poised like there's a kind of a coiled spring feel to the way that she's sitting, in that she's relaxed, but she could jump up to her feet at any moment. So, you know, I'm feeling that. And I'm kind of picking up on almost sort of like a hieroglyphics kind of thing going on here, which is where the Mummy Returns kind of reference came from. But obviously her attire is more sort of fantasy Skyrim style, which, you know, as I say, I'm a big fan of both things, so awesome. Either way, definitely an amazing image. Well done, Bradford. I'll be really pleased with that. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, folks, thanks ever so much for watching. Let us both know what you think in the comments below. A huge thank you to Roy. If you want to check him out, I will include a description to his channel in the description down below. And you can go and visit him and give him all your support, as you have done for me over the last few years.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And guys, keep working on this stuff, because it's definitely one of those things where I know I can get discouraged sometimes. Then I look back like 3 months to some older renders. I'm like, no, I've made progress. And that's something good to keep in mind, because it is something that you will develop a feel for, and things that I know when I started out, like, I had this long checklist and I would forget things and stuff wouldn't be right. And now half of it's just natural. You know,
sure.
I need to soften that expression a bit. Oh, this lighting isn't quite coming from where I want. Let me try to adjust it. Whereas, you know, when I started, those things were horrible. But keep it coming, guys. Keep improving, and keep sending, you know, these excellent renders in. It's always good to see folks work, and too, just to see, I mean, things like this photo here with the mystery, where we're like, hey, what's going to happen next?
Definitely. Awesome. Okay, guys, I'll see you in the next one. But until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, all right? Bye-bye.